Hello, my lovely Virgo. This reading is for Virgo, Sun, Moon, Rising, and Venus. Take a moment to relax. Virgo, open your heart. We're tuning into your love energy and what may be unfolding for you. Take what resonates and gently leave the rest. Now, let's dive into what's coming next for you. Okay, so Virgo, there's something you've been sensing about a specific person in your life. And what I'm picking up on is that this person might be connected to the letter J, either in their name or in some other significant way that makes this resonate for you. But more importantly than the letter itself, what's coming through is that you've been experiencing a particular quality of unease around this connection. A feeling that something isn't being shared with you, that there are layers to this dynamic that you're not fully seeing. What I want to be clear about from the beginning is that I'm not claiming to know what's happening inside this person's mind or heart. What I am sensing is what you're experiencing in the energy between you, what you're picking up on in how this person shows up, what you're noticing that's creating this feeling of something hidden. Here's the thing. Your intuition about people is information. When you consistently feel like something is off with someone, when you notice inconsistencies between what they say and how they behave, when you pick up on a quality of guardedness or deflection or evasiveness, those perceptions are worth paying attention to. You might have been second guessing yourself, telling yourself you're being paranoid or overly suspicious, trying to rationalize away what you're sensing because you don't have concrete proof. What's coming through is an invitation to stop doing that, to trust what you're observing even before you have evidence that others would consider definitive. What's emerging in the energy is something about patterns of behavior you've been noticing. This person might be showing up inconsistently, saying one thing and doing another, being available and then suddenly unavailable without clear explanation, deflecting when you ask direct questions, creating explanations that don't quite add up when you examine them closely. You might have been giving them the benefit of the doubt, assuming the best, making excuses for behavior that in anyone else you would immediately recognize as questionable. What I'm sensing is that your generosity toward this person, while it speaks well of your character, might be preventing you from seeing clearly what's actually happening in this dynamic. What's whispering through is something about the difference between what this person presents on the surface and what you're sensing beneath that presentation. There might be a curated version of themselves that they offer to you, a particular image they're maintaining, a story about who they are and what they're about that feels increasingly disconnected from what you observe when you're actually paying attention. Some people are very skilled at managing perception, at controlling the narrative about themselves, at deflecting scrutiny while appearing open. What you might be picking up on is that gap between the managed image and the actual reality. This reflection invites you to consider, when you think about this person, what specific behaviors or moments create that feeling of something being hidden? And have you been dismissing those moments instead of letting them accumulate into a pattern? What I'm seeing in the energy is something about your own relationship with confrontation and clarity. You might be someone who avoids direct confrontation, who doesn't want to create conflict, who gives people multiple chances before you're willing to acknowledge that something is genuinely wrong. What's coming through is that this tendency, while it can be a strength in some contexts, might be working against you in this situation. Your reluctance to see something difficult might be allowing a dynamic to continue that's actually affecting you negatively. That's creating stress or confusion or emotional drain that you're absorbing rather than addressing. What's interesting is that sometimes the darkest secrets aren't dramatic betrayals or shocking revelations. Sometimes what's being hidden is simpler but still significant: dishonesty about circumstances, lack of transparency about other connections or commitments, misrepresentation of their situation or availability, ongoing behaviors that they know you wouldn't accept if you knew about them. What you're sensing might not be something that would shock others, but it might be something that would significantly change how you understand this person and this dynamic if it were fully visible to you. What's also coming through is something about information that might be approaching. You might be in a phase where what's been hidden is getting harder to keep hidden, where the effort required to maintain the facade is becoming unsustainable, where circumstances are shifting in ways that are going to make concealment more difficult. Some people in similar situations describe this as the feeling that truth is assembling itself, that pieces are starting to connect in ways that are going to make a larger picture visible. What you might be sensing is the approach of that moment of clarity, even if you can't see the specifics yet. What's also emerging is something about other people's observations. You might discover, or you might have already noticed, that you're not the only person who has questions about this individual, that others have picked up on similar inconsistencies or have information that would be relevant to you if shared. What I'm sensing is that there might be value in having conversations with people who know this person in different contexts, in comparing notes, in being willing to hear information that might be uncomfortable but could be clarifying. This reflection invites you to consider who else in your life knows this person or has observed them in contexts you haven't had access to. And what might you learn if you asked direct questions instead of maintaining polite silence? What's coming through is something about your own boundaries and how they might need to shift in response to what you're sensing. Even without complete clarity about what's being hidden, you have enough information from your own observations and intuition to make choices about how available you want to be in this dynamic, how much trust you want to extend, how much vulnerability you want to risk. You don't need to wait for dramatic revelation or proof before you adjust your boundaries. You can make choices based on the energy you're experiencing, the patterns you're observing, the discomfort you're feeling. What's whispering through the energy is something about self-protection and whether you've been prioritizing this person's comfort over your own clarity. You might have been avoiding asking direct questions because you don't want to seem suspicious or controlling, avoiding examining their explanations too closely because you don't want to create tension, allowing vagueness to persist because pinning things down feels confrontational. What I'm sensing is that this protective stance toward their comfort might be costing you your own peace, your own sense of security in the dynamic, your own ability to make informed decisions about what you want this connection to be. What I'm seeing in the energy is something about the quality of darkness that might be present in what's hidden. This might not be malicious in the sense of deliberately trying to harm you, but it might be selfish in the sense of prioritizing their own desires or needs or image over honesty with you. Some people hide things not because they're evil, but because they want to maintain access to something they know you wouldn't grant them if you knew the full truth. That kind of calculated dishonesty, even without malicious intent, can still be deeply damaging to trust and to your sense of reality in the relationship. What's also coming through is something about your own fear of what you might discover if you look more closely. Part of you might prefer not to know, might want to maintain the version of this person and this dynamic that exists when you're not examining it too carefully. What I'm sensing is that this preference for not knowing, while understandable, might be keeping you in a situation that's not actually serving your well-being. Sometimes the fear of knowing is more painful than the actual knowing, and the relief of clarity can outweigh the discomfort of what the clarity reveals. This reflection invites you to consider, what's the worst thing you imagine could be hidden? And if that thing were true, what would you want to do with that information? What's emerging in the energy is something about how this situation is affecting other areas of your life. The cognitive dissonance of sensing something is wrong while trying to maintain normalcy in the dynamic might be creating stress that's bleeding into your other relationships, your work, your peace of mind. You might be spending emotional energy managing your own anxiety about the situation, trying to talk yourself out of what you're sensing, creating explanations for things that don't actually make sense. That energy expenditure has costs that might not be immediately obvious, but are nonetheless real. What's whispering through is something about the timeline of revelation. I can't tell you when or how what's hidden will become visible to you. What I can tell you is that you're already picking up on enough to make different choices right now. Even without complete information, you can trust your observations about inconsistent behavior. You can honor your discomfort with evasiveness. You can make decisions about boundaries based on patterns you're seeing, rather than waiting for dramatic proof of wrongdoing. What I'm seeing as this moves toward completion is something about your own power in this situation. You're not helpless. You're not dependent on this person choosing to be honest with you. You can ask direct questions and evaluate the quality of the responses. You can observe behavior and trust your own interpretation of what you're seeing. You can make choices about how much of yourself you're willing to invest in a dynamic that doesn't feel fully trustworthy. You can decide that your own peace and clarity matter more than maintaining a connection that requires you to ignore your own perceptions. What's coming through is also something about self-trust as the real issue underneath all of this. Your intuition has been speaking to you about this person and this situation. The question is whether you're going to honor that inner knowing or continue to override it in favor of giving this person chances they might not have earned. What you're sensing about something being hidden, that sensing is valuable information. It's not paranoia. It's not you being difficult or suspicious. It's your wisdom trying to protect you from a situation that isn't what it appears to be. This reflection invites you to consider, if you trusted your intuition completely about this situation, what would you do differently starting right now? As this comes to a close, what I want to leave you with is this. Whatever is hidden will eventually reveal itself, either because circumstances force it into visibility or because you ask the questions that demand clear answers. or because the person maintaining the secret finds it unsustainable to continue